You won't believe how easy it is to make this homemade, smooth, creamy pudding from scratch. You'll never want to buy the box stuff again. The only trouble is deciding which one is your favorite. We're making 3 different kinds of pudding today: vanilla, chocolate, and butterscotch. And they're all made from real simple ingredients that you probably already have in your fridge or your pantry. And the best part is, no matter which flavor you choose, it comes together in about 10 minutes flat. All right, enough with the talking. Let's make some pudding. So we're gonna start with the vanilla pudding first, and that's because this is basically the same base that you're gonna use for all 3 recipes, just with a few tweaks. So you're gonna start with 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt in a medium-sized saucepan. First, you're gonna mix that all together. And then you're gonna whisk in 2 cups of milk, and you're gonna turn it on medium heat and cook it over medium until it's thickened and bubbly. And I have to say, I was never a big pudding fan. Like, you know those pudding cups you buy at the store, or even the boxed pudding? I liked it okay, but it was never my favorite. And I think there's just something about the flavor that is so different when you make this from scratch. You're gonna be so pleasantly surprised at how delicious this is. So while you're waiting for it to get thick and bubbly, you want to come back and whisk it every once in a while, probably every 30 seconds or so, just to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom. You don't want your milk to get browned or burned on the bottom, because that's going to give your pudding a really unsavory flavor. So just make sure you stay close by, give it a little whisk every once in a while. You'll see it starting to get thick and bubbly, and that's what you want it to look like. And depending on your stove, you may have to turn this down just a little bit. I have a gas stove cooked up, and I found that it was cooking a little bit hot, so I had to turn it down just a smidge about partway through so it wasn't getting cooked too much. For this next step, you're actually going to use 2 egg yolks, whisking them together in a bowl, and then you're going to take your hot pudding mixture and you're just going to drizzle a little bit of that into your egg and mix it up. And this is called tempering the egg. You're basically making it so that your egg is not going to cook into one big giant scrambled egg when you pour it into your pudding. Once you've got a little bit of the hot mixture whisked into your egg completely, then drizzle the whole thing back into the pot. But just make sure that you continue whisking rapidly to make sure you're whisking it all in really well, which will, prevent the egg from getting cooked into those little yucky egg pieces that people don't like in pudding. Once it's mixed in completely and it's all smooth, you're going to continue to cook this for 2 more minutes, and then you can remove it from the heat. Now comes the good stuff that gives it all the flavor. You're going to take your pot off the heat and you're going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter and a teaspoon of vanilla. And just make sure you've whisked the whole thing until the butter is completely melted. So my mom is a notorious pudding hater, and one of the things she doesn't like is those little pieces of egg that sometimes form in your pudding that get cooked. So the first time I made pudding, I was like, okay, how am I going to prevent that? So I grabbed a fine mesh strainer, and I like to pour my pudding through the strainer and kind of just gently shake it side to side, and that gets all of those little pieces of egg that may have formed in there, because it's going to happen no matter how well you whisk. It gets all those little pieces out. And to prevent that skin from forming on top of your pudding, I like to take a piece of plastic wrap and just press it gently against the surface of the pudding and wrap it up that way. Just go ahead and pop that in your fridge until it is 100% chilled and ready to eat. So the biggest difference between your vanilla pudding and your butterscotch pudding is that rich caramelly flavor, and that comes from the brown sugar. So instead of your regular sugar in this recipe, you're just switching it out for brown sugar. Otherwise, everything else is the same. And I was thinking this would be a really great recipe to make with your kids. If your kids like cooking, or even if they don't, this might be a really good place to start. It's a really simple, easy recipe, and who doesn't love pudding? So if you try this with your kids, will you let me know in the comments below? And I also want to know, which flavor is your favorite? Do you like butterscotch, chocolate, or vanilla? It's a pretty hard choice. One of the best parts is that you can substitute any of these homemade pudding flavors for boxed mix in any recipe that calls for pudding. So next time you're making a recipe that calls for pudding, like no-bake eclair cake or poke cake or whatever, come back to this video and watch it again and try out one of these recipes, because it's going to have such better flavor and It won't have preservatives and it's not going to have artificial colors or flavors. It's just the good stuff. Well, I don't think that any recipe that has this much butter and sugar can be declared healthy. I do think that it's probably healthy in terms of real whole ingredients compared to the store-bought version, and that's something you can feel good about. Only other change in this recipe compared to the vanilla one is that it has 1 extra tablespoon of butter, which could be why it tastes so good. That sort of adds to that caramelly flavor too, is the butter and brown sugar combined. You're just going to continue to follow all the same steps as you did with the vanilla pudding, and once you've got that all done, pop it in the fridge to chill, and we're going to move on to our chocolate pudding. Just a couple of changes for our chocolate pudding. First, you're going to increase the sugar to 1 cup instead of 3/4. Otherwise, all the other ingredients are the same. You're going to take 2 1-ounce squares of unsweetened chocolate and break them up and put them in the milk and just keep whisking until it's completely melted. I used dark chocolate here because I didn't have unsweetened, and I actually wouldn't recommend that unless you like your pudding really sweet, so I would stick with unsweetened. Otherwise, all the other instructions are exactly the same, so you just follow the same process. Now, I will say all of these puddings are also great warm, so if you can't wait, I don't blame you. And they're so good warm too, especially in the fall or the winter. They're just really cozy. I love simple and easy recipes like this that just come together in a few minutes, and they're perfect for any occasion, or really no occasion at all if you just have a craving for something sweet. On your way out, don't forget to check out my easy creme brulee recipe, because if you can make pudding, you can make creme brulee. And don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!